used to be back in the day when you wanted to harass somebody, you could make a prank phone call. For those of you who don't recall prank phone calls, you would call someone and ask them, is your fridge running? And that person would say yes. You tell them to go and catch it, hang up, and laugh. The reason why this worked was because of anonymity. Back in the old days, there was no call display, there was no star 69, so you could do it because nobody knew who you were. So these days, what used to be just fun and games on the phone has turned into what we've called over the internet trolls. And internet trolls are basically people who use that same anonymity to do things or harass people on the internet. Here's a definition of internet trolls. An internet troll is a person whose sole purpose in life is to seek out people to argue with over the internet over extremely trivial issues such as what happened in a blog, what happened on Facebook, what happened on MySpace, and a host of others. Well, what's happening now is that what was just um, stupid or silly little arguments over cyberspace has now morphed into what's becoming an actual crime. And what we're looking at is a story that looks at this in the context of regulations in at least 3 different countries. So this is a story from the BBC about internet trolls and the guidelines for crown prosecutors in that country when they're prosecuting internet trolls. And we're going to go a little bit into that a little bit more later. I'm going to use the statute I know the best, which is the Florida statute, as kind of an example of the types of behavior that we're talking about. So this is the Florida statute in a whole. I'm showing you the whole statute because we're going to be going through the definitions, and you have to remember when you're looking at statutes, it's always important to look at your definitions. So, harass, I've highlighted that. You read that there, the type of conduct which means to harass. And then I've highlighted here a credible threat, which is going to be important when we go down to the next part of the statute. And what it is to cyberstalk, I've highlighted that as well. This is the misdemeanor version of the crime. So the misdemeanor in Florida is punished. It's a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 364 days in county jail. And notice you have to have all these elements in order to get the misdemeanor. And then when you get to the felony level, the difference is you add a credible threat. So a misdemeanor would be you repeatedly harass and bother somebody, let's say on the internet, saying mean things to them or whatsoever. The difference with the credible threat is you go back up to your definition of credible threat there in subsection C. So this is something that would make somebody in reasonable fear for their safety, like threatening to kill them or threatening to harm them in some way or threatening to shoot them. That's the difference between the felony and the misdemeanor in Florida. And again, I'm using this by way of definition. Every state's going to have their own statute that covers this particular behavior, and every country is going to deal with it in a different way. So this is the act the story is talking about, but specifically the story is talking about the guidelines the prosecutor's office have developed to prosecute this particular act. So we're going to go to the guidelines themselves right now. If you notice, the guidelines for prosecuting the particular act are discussing things that are very similar to the Florida statute. So here you have electronic communication again, message that, and their key term is indecent or grossly offensive or a threat. And if you look here a little further, I've highlighted the section that talks about the same thing again and has very similar language to the Florida statute, which is why I showed you that in the beginning. You look here, it's talking about, again, similar language as to how you get to that particular behavior, the elements that you need to prove to get to that particular crime. But specifically, I wanted you to look here in subsection 4, A and B. Basically, they're talking about 2 different crimes. So there's a lesser crime where you can be convicted for no more than 12 months and a fine. There's a more serious crime where you can be convicted for up to 2 years and a fine. And that's very similar to the split between a misdemeanor and a felony in the Florida statute. So when you're looking at common law systems, and in the United States is a common law system, and many other countries that have common law systems, the way they look at the law and the way they split the law as far as punishment is going to be very similar. So Again, I'm showing you here from the Crown Prosecutor Service guidelines for prosecuting. This is how they get to the test for grossly offensive. So the test for grossly offensive actually comes out of a case. So when the prosecutors are looking at what they're going to charge and what cases they're going to go after, this is the test that they apply to those facts in those particular cases. Which is why I always tell you students it's very, very important. It's not enough to just pull out pieces of a case. You need to pull out the tests. If you see a test, a rule, prongs, these are the things that you're going to now apply to the facts in your assignments and your questions that will help you get to the answers that you need and help you explain what you need to do for your arguments. And just I want to show you guys here that also in New Zealand, they're pretty much thinking the same way as the Florida statute and the UK statute. That trolls and people who cyberbully are facing up to 2 years in jail. So it is important when you're looking at these types of cases that you are analyzing the facts in relation to the elements of the crime and you have the definitions of the statute so you understand how those facts lay out in those particular elements to see if maybe you've triggered a crime. So just being anonymous on the internet and cyberbullying people, now countries are actually going after you as they would for harassment of any other kind.